Alright, so back at it again with the world building. Uh, Today we wanted to flesh out what we started yesterday. But first, I tried to fix OBS to be like a little bit more performant, probably lower quality, but it'll have to do for now just so I drop way less frames and disconnect less. And then, alright, I was going to look for more visuals. I guess I can do that by opening up Photoshop. Let's see here. Projects. And over here, open this. Art characters. So, while that's loading, next is design the unique flavor for all the specifics of these elements. Yep, that's what we're gonna do. Diagram. Alright, the diagram for the mechanics. So if I show you this, whoops. If I show you this chart maker, uh, ideally we have the mechanics of the game dictating the narrative. Let's see, like like that. I guess this is how you can do it. Where we focus on mechanics first and see and generate a story that fits to the mechanics. You can do this the other way around too. It's just that whoops. It's just that it might be difficult to come up with new game mechanics for the narrative that you're thinking, and it's also risky because uh, you might end up trying to make mechanics that you don't know how to make, or making mechanics you don't want to make just to fit the narrative. And focusing on mechanics first helps sort of remind you that you're making a game, and the priority is that the gameplay or the mechanics feel good or are prioritized over the story that results from it. That's just how I like to do it, but yeah. So if we were to go back to uh, this Google Doc, now that I transferred it to Google Doc and learned how to do it through OBS, or at least how to show Google Doc on OBS, since I didn't know how to do it before, uh, we're going to start like one by one placing all these mechanics in the diagram and then making connections from these to the narrative elements we world built here in the setting elements brainstorm. So, and then when we make connections, we're going to detail those connections. For example, over here, let's say we had one more thing that comes in between. So we delete this, we do this. And actually, I should probably delete these and use a different kind of edge. This, like that. This is where uh, we detail the interaction slash connection between a mechanic and a narrative. We're gonna have a whole bunch of these, like a whole bunch, but that'll be in a bit. We'll do we'll do it step by step with each mechanic and with each narrative, and we won't do it for every single one, but we'll do it for all the important ones. So at least we have a visual way of comprehending the things that we made. So first you have to flesh out what these things are. Oh, and I was able to think of some new stuff what while I wasn't streaming. Uh, Ideally, I would have saved all this new stuff for the actual stream, but then I didn't want to forget about them, so I just wrote them down here so that you can also see. So for the regenerating elites and bosses, I mostly wrote down my reasoning. Basically, uh, when you're playing is action like an action game where there's combat and there's a boss, uh, there are two general play styles or types of gameplay. One where you're aggressively trying to deal damage to the elite or the boss. Well, I just call it elite because there are some enemies that are stronger than regular enemies, but not quite a boss. So you could call them mini boss. I just call them elite. I'll just shorten it to boss for the explanation. So when you're fighting the boss, you can either aggressively deal damage as fast as possible. So it's like kill it before it kills you, or you can slowly dodge every boss's attack or dodge or block or and like poke at the boss every now and then over a long period of time. Now that sort of defensive, like kiting or chip turtling kind of playstyle, I didn't really like it, or I didn't really want to uh, encourage the player to do that because usually in many games it is the optimal and safest way to do it. It's just that it takes the longest, and um, I myself am not really that patient to whenever I like restart a boss fight because I died last time. I don't want to go through the entire long process of turtling that boss again because that was the methodology I came up with to defeat that boss in the first place, or at least that's what my best strategy was. I'd rather have the best strategies to beat the boss be the leaning more towards the aggressive damage dealing playstyle, which is all about taking lots of calculated risks. And that is part of the fun in video games. You don't want to like optimize everything. You just want to get a general feel of something and take the risks you feel are correct. And there's a mix of trial and error and like gut instinct there, but that's what I think is funner compared to long stretches of turtling. And based on that concept of aggressive damage dealing being preferred, the way to discourage the player to from turtling without like just outright saying to the player in like the instructions or something, don't turtle, is through the game mechanics wherein the bosses regenerate over time. If the bosses regenerate over time, then slowly dealing damage to the boss will never get the player anywhere. Because by the time the player gets to attack again, the boss is already back to full health. That's the meaning, by the way, of regenerating. In case uh, this is not the kind of game or genre you play with like regularly. But yeah, in I guess action games or the action game genre, there's regeneration in some niche enemy types, but not every single boss has it. But I would like every single boss here to have it. Now, the problem or the con, if there's pros and cons, the con of having all elites and bosses regenerate is this horrible feeling where the player messes up when the boss is really low health and the player has to back off, and all of a sudden the regeneration is bringing the boss's health all the way back up to full because the player like lost their groove or lost their um, sort of play what they lost their sort of yeah fighting groove I guess, and so they played slightly worse, and then the boss regenerates all the way to full. We want to avoid that feeling too, and one way to do it is uh, if the player really wants to turtle in terms of like deal damage slowly, then based on the overall damage they deal to the boss, this is probably like more damage than the boss's health bar even has. then the boss can change state into a state where the boss uh, has slower health regeneration, but the boss becomes more aggressive. This is like a different style or different way of doing the focus on aggressive damage dealing for the players rather than turtling. Uh, this is just so there's a sense of progress for the player whenever they're fighting a boss. So there will be less openings for the player to deal damage to the boss, but whenever there is an opening, the progress the player makes when dealing damage to the boss at that state is more solidified because the boss's health regeneration is slower or even non-existent. So that was that explanation there. If we quickly go through the others. Oh yeah, so the because of the pseudo immortality of all characters, there's no way you can like kill an NPC and then you'll never have access to them again. The only thing that happens when you kill an NPC is you define your relationship with them as negative or like hostile. Therefore, you can't really do the interactions with them. You can't do friendly interactions with them or neutral interactions for that matter. So you can't talk to them, trade with them, uh, get like presents, I guess, if that's ever a thing. Uh, you can't like do the requests for some rewards, like I guess this is quest taking. Although I don't really want to make a quest system, but yeah, there are a lot of NPCs, and I wanted to also have that sort of concept wherein every NPC or every shopkeeper or merchant where you can trade data with, or not just data but trade items with, can turn into a boss if you choose to make them into a boss by like attacking them or like not really. There will be fail safes so that player attacking NPCs doesn't immediately make it hostile because players play with the game a lot or like fiddle with the game a lot and can accidentally hit NPCs. So but that's all in the balancing. That's not for the high concept. In the high concept, I want that ability of the player to define how they relate to all the NPCs. And there are some NPCs where if you're friends with one, you won't be able to be friends with another. So that encourages multiple playthroughs to see what it's like if you're friends with the other versus friends with the one and all that. And the only things that change when you're um, and the other part that simplifies this is uh, when an NPC is hostile or friendly to you or neutral, that just defines your interactions with them. Because the other thing we want to do is not make a super in-depth simulation of relationships uh, like some other games do. We just want to have sort of binary, or not really binary, but simple states of friendly, neutral, or hostile, and not much in between to keep it simple. Um, and then also this shouldn't delete rewards from the player. So for example, the player wants to do a murder hobo playstyle where they kill all NPCs they see. Because there are players like that, and I do that sometimes too. And I don't want to punish them by just never, since they lose access to trading, they lose access to some things. Therefore, I want to give certain rewards which are only possible if you kill the NPCs, and then certain rewards which are only possible if you trade with the NPCs or be friend with them. So that again encourages multiple playthroughs. It seems. Uh, yeah. So and lets the player really express how they want to uh, go with the game. And then here I just wanted to add one more in the mapping data. Just mark where all the interactables either spawn slash stay in. So in a map. And then oh yeah, another note with the data mechanics. Data can change over time based on certain triggers. So sometimes monsters can gain new abilities and so their data on like their actives changes or their goals change because they had a change of heart or whatever. But not really. I guess it's a character, not a monster. Or it could also be a monster if they're like if their long term goal changed from hunting to building a shelter. But uh, yeah, data can change, and it encourages the player to keep on gathering data because updated data is more valuable, and it helps them out more in playing the game. And is that it? Yeah, I think that's all the new stuff I added in between this stream and the last. So now I was gonna go with the visuals. Alright, I was gonna show off sort of placeholder art for the player character, or at least the current player character. So I'll add that in OBS plus window capture. Photoshop. Okay. Alright. And shit, expand that there. Place that there. Oh no, it's not showing the actual art. Well, that's unfortunate. Huh. Well, I'll have to learn that some other time then, I guess. Uh, that is very weird. Oh well, visual some other time. So back to generating stuff. All right. So let's start, I guess, with the mechanics. If we were talking so much about the mechanics, we'll start with I think abilities of the player. Okay, regenerating elites, pseudo mortal characters, handling data, abilities here, effect, and the element attached. Surrounding mechanics, there's man steel. Uh, and now we want to detail the actual abilities. Is it showing on OBS? Yep. Player abilities, or actually, let's change it to character. Excuse me. Change it to character abilities because I'm thinking all of the monster abilities can be gained by the player eventually and throughout the entire game because that seems interesting. So let's start with phase shift because I really like that ability from Dota. There's this character called Puck, and phase shift basically allows them to disappear from the world um, temporarily and then come back. Uh, it's like having iframes on your dodge, but instead of dodging like with mobility and having iframes, this is just literally purely the iframes because you like stay in place. Uh, you even like stay in place mid-air is how I sort of thought about it. So there's that ability that I definitely want in the game, and I already coded a phase shift ability um, in the sort of how do you say basic uh, like my prototype Unity game or like project of the game. Oh yeah, that means okay. I actually think I can show this placeholder art if I do it this way with OBS. I forgot about display capture. So show this, hide, hide. Oh, nope. Or kinda yes, I just have to shift it really quickly. So this and go to Photoshop. So there. In case you wanted to see uh, the placeholder art and sort of have this random steampunk sword, this random big mutated hand or claw thing, and some man-made extensions or whatever. Uh, it's mostly placeholder because I want to change the armor to be more still simple but more than just some sort of half plate or whatever. And then I wanted to change the head to be not so anime. Uh, Probably I will make uh, a physics simulation like hair in the game so it like waves in the wind. I could also do that with a cape in the future. Just so I don't have to draw the actual hair and cape every time in the animations. I could just like leave it be. But yeah, this is how the character currently looks like. And in the story, or at least in the placeholder story, when I was thinking about it, the character is this sort of monstrous monster scientist or sort of scientist that's looking to um, like kind of like a murder hobo, but also gain knowledge. So uh, if you had some sort of scientist that wanted to kill for knowledge, that's the basic idea of this character anyway, or the basic goal. And now if I go back to the other this, yep. And let's show this as well, and this. All right. So back here, we were thinking of character abilities. We have to have a sort of ball ability, like the orb. Uh, so this like another ability of that same character in Dota. Basically, you fire this orb in a linear direction, and part of that orb's ability is letting the character teleport to wherever the orb is at any time, if it still exists. So it's not just a damaging like fireball, but it's also a fireball you can optionally teleport to at any time. Now I don't think I want to put that all in one ability. I kind of want to make it a combo ability. So for example, we have another ability called let's say thunderclap or war. Oh, it's more like a stomp, I guess. War stomp. Let's just call it war stomp for now. That general AOE around yourself ability that deals damage and sometimes does some extra disable like stunning or slowing. So yeah, we have this war stomp ability, and then I want to be able to set up like modifiers for the abilities that allow you to change or combo them together. So for example, when you fire an orb and then you cast War Stomp while the orb is still flying, the War Stomp will first teleport you to wherever the orb is, and then cast the War Stomp there. So that's a cool thing. Uh, I'm not sure I'll call it. I'll call it War Stomp as a placeholder for now, but I'll probably think of something else in the future. So we have those three. Kind of want to make some more. Uh, if we have a phase shift, uh, well, the basic dash of a player, I think, is just mobility, so there's no iframes. But we could make like a phase dash. So, honestly, at this point, I should make this an entire category. So we have phase, and I'm going to transfer all of these underneath it. So we have phase dash, phase strike. So this kind of like you disappear, and then at the end of the duration of the disappearance, the player will come out and automatically strike the area around them or stomp or whatever. So it's just and then the face dash. It's like a dash. It's like the regular dodge roll from like Dark Souls. So it's movement with iframes, except here we flavored it as phasing dash. We have that orb thing. I guess in the orb, you can kind of let's just break it down more to sort of linear orb, and then a lob orb where this is where it goes up first then down. I'm not sure if I'll include that fully because there's no aiming controls in my game, or at least I don't want to have to force the player to aim with like another analog when they're casting their abilities. And then the movement analog stick, or the movement was if it's keyboard and mouse, is already being used to cast these abilities because part of these abilities is there. I only have one ability button, but what ability gets cast is based on what modifier from the what direction modifier from the movement input is being used. So for example, there's an up ability. What's this? Ability is cast. Ability cast is wait, which ability cast? Cast. depends on the player's movement input. So maybe I should include a list of movement inputs, ability modifiers. So we have up ability, we have down ability, forward ability, and sort of still or like neutral ability. There can't be a backward ability because the moment you move backwards, the character will also face backwards, and backwards will become the new forwards. Since, as I said, there's no aiming mechanic in the game. Uh, so now, oh, that's nice. We haven't disconnected in quite a while. That's really so that's a feels good, man. Um, so these are all those movement in modifiers. So the lobbed orb will probably just lob it no matter where the aim is, and this way, I guess you could make it a sort of double or triple jump if you do that wash stomp combined causes you to teleport to where the orb is. So you lob it, it naturally goes upward. Therefore, when you teleport to it, you yourself will be upward. So I'll detail that. Can theoretically be used as an extra jump. Then here we had the war stomp. This is kind of like the self AoE. Uh, Now, what other abilities are out there? I'm going to just check. Wait now. In my OBS. Okay, I'm going to have to leave this at. Scroll down. Leave it at here for now because I'm going to check for Dota 2 abilities. Alright. Oh no, this is not a nice. Okay, let me just Dota 2 heroes instead. We've got a lot of abilities here to like inspire ourselves from. So let's see. Oh no, this is like. Oh wait, no, this is including many heroes. Okay, nice. Oh, is Void Spirit is the Radiant? Okay, that's interesting. So let's see. Earthshaker. So whenever you cast something, he stuns everything around him, and then he has like linear stun, an, a spell that buffs his next attack. Ah, that could be. Well, in general, buffing could be an interesting. Uh, Wait a second. I could just put this in an entirely new window. So when I'm this. Ah, yeah, there. So I'll keep this window up, and I'll just. Okay, that's perfect. Uh, so we have to include buffs in our abilities, and then the different kinds. There's next attack buff. There attack or like next action is buff. Then there's durational buffs. Then there's the sort of shield. What's this? Temporary HP, or I call it shield buff. And what this means is, as long as the shield is up, you get to have the buff. So when you take damage or enough damage that the shield breaks, then the buff uh, gets nullified or like breaks. So shield buff. Uh, Buff effects are active as long as the shield is still active. Semicolon, shield breaks after a specified amount of damage is taken. Now, this game, for the player at least, the HP is lives based, or not really lives, but uh, it's in like, for example, the player has 4 health to start with. So 4 hits from enemies and then they die. It's not like a sort of health bar where you have 500 HP and each enemy deals like 100 damage or something like that. I wanted to keep it lives based so that I don't get super nitty gritty with the details of enemy damage output. It's just does the enemy deal 1 damage or 2 damage or like 3 damage if I'm really being really mean with that kind of enemy. Yeah, to keep it very simple and uh, not just simple, but keep it very clear what the effects are. So if an enemy is strong, it's very clear that they're strong. They deal an entire extra damage worth of pain. Yeah. So durational, that makes sense. Next action, that makes sense. What else? So shield kinda incentivizes or encourages hitless gameplay because if you go hitless, then you get to just keep the buff as long as possible. Oh no! Our first disconnect. Hello. Hmm. Network error. Well, we lasted much longer than last time, at least. Um. See, I just want to check on something. Yeah, my internet is taking quite a beating. Hmm. 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 What is happening to my internet? Hello. OBS, would you like to fix yourself? I'm only dropping 25% of my frames this time. Damn it. Hmm. Anyway, I guess I'll go back to explaining for now, at least with the for the YouTube video. So we have phase, we have orb, self AoE, we have buffs. What other abilities are there in Dota that we can get inspired from? Cough cough plagiarize. No, we're not trying to plagiarize. It's just since you can't plagiarize a mechanic. Uh, oh, I guess invisibility will still be under buff, but it's like in the kinds of buffs. Um, so I guess over here I should put buff effects, and then here is, or not really buff effects. I'll just simplify to effects, and then type. Just or like length type or like duration type. So these were all types. So and then the effects is what more stats. So this is like actually the only stats that matters is like damage and speed. So I just damage. You can have more move speed. Uh, yeah, part of damage there's could be attack speed. What are other buffs? Invisibility, because I want there to be a little bit of a stealth mechanic in the game, at least for aggroing enemies. Uh, and those are the buffs I can think of for now. So if we go back to Dota, what are the other stuff? Oh yeah, disables. Gotta have them disables. So phase. Phase is technically a durational buff. Come to think of it, uh, the things you think about. So let's transfer phase down to buffs right there. And then maybe I should remove dash and strike because if we're gonna make a new ability, we could just combine what already exists in here rather than manually combining things ourselves. Part of emergent game design, making all the base components, like breaking them down to their most like purest form or basic form. So just phase, which is a buff effect that is durational, and then combining them to make the complicated versions afterwards. Uh, so we wanted effects for damage, I guess. So I should make these buff effects, and then I should make a sort of thing called like damage spells. So there's orb, uh, there's AOE. Uh, these should be delivery types, like how the this is for buff types. I should not capitalize every single letter. It's gonna be really annoying later on. So delivery types. So you can deliver it by an orb, whether linear or lob. You can deliver it with AOE, whether centered on self or centered on this on orb. So and then you could have effect, which is damage effects. So we could have disables, and we could have here like stun, slow. Uh, I think I should limit the disables to just those two for now. Oh wait, right. I didn't want to make a generic stun or mechanic where an ability stuns because there's no cooldowns in this game. So if you have enough mana, you can just cast the same ability over and over again until you run out. Because the way you gain mana is not through regeneration, it's through stealing mana from enemies whenever you attack. That way, again with the aggressive gameplay, um, you can't gain mana back unless you're up in their face doing melee attacks. Because range attacks, there are no range attack in the game other than spells, and spells cost mana, they don't generate mana. So the only way to generate mana is to, uh, well, excuse the term, but mana and like uh, use your melee attacks on the enemy and steal the mana there, which I like because it rewards proper positioning and timing for when the player goes in and when the player backs off. And another sort of emergent mechanic from that is if you want to deal more DPS while the enemy is exposed, so the enemy is not attacking or not being dangerous, the player is melee attacking, dealing the damage, and gaining mana. Then, when the enemy is attacking and being aggressive, and the enemy is like casting spells, the player backs off and still continues to deal damage by casting the player's spells. That way, uh, the player is able to counteract the regeneration mechanic of bosses through skillful gameplay. And this is part of like rewarding mastery of the game. And I really like that sort of attack, dash away, cast, dash back in, attack, sort of ebb and flow. I think that will make for some good combat. And then, of course, bosses will switch it up by varying up the timings of when they are aggressive and when they're not. And that makes for more gameplay. So back to the abilities we were generating. Damage effects, we have the disables. Uh, and all right, I wanted to make it so uh, there's something called disable damage. So there's stun damage and slow damage. Basically, you don't instead of instantly getting stunned, you have to deal enough stun damage to a boss or an enemy, and then when it reaches a certain threshold, then the next then the stun damage will actually stun that boss. Uh, so it might be weird because it's like an extra health bar on the enemy's already regenerating health bar, and it's only for disables. But that's in general how I wanted to do it so that uh, I can balance the stuns in the game more, and so that stuns in the game are a more timing based thing again because, for example, you're building up stun damage throughout a combat so that when you stun them, you can unload all your most damaging spells and attacks in that instant, and like maybe hopefully kill the enemy. So again, that ties in with the regeneration mechanic since the regeneration mechanic kind of ties in all damage based or combat based things. Uh, so stun damage, and I'll put here disable uh, quotation mark disable damage uh, is built up by dealing. This is not built up. How do I explain this? Only when the player deals enough disable damage does the boss get uh, become vulnerable to disables. So some sort of CC armor, but then once the boss gets stunned, uh, I should make this a mechanic, so or like a explanation rather than this sort of weird thing. So mechanic explanation uh, there, and then the other detail was when when the boss or after the boss gets disabled, their disable health bar generates back to full. So the player has to deal their disable damage again. And then disable types, we have stuns and slows for now. Next. So those are damage effects. Uh, I could technically. Oh wait, I could put here vulnerability. Basically amplifies the damage the vulnerable character takes. So this is a more sort of long-lasting, or at least in theory, this is a long-lasting disable, or maybe I could make it status. Yeah, I should replace disable with status. Status damage. Copy. Copy. Statuses. Gets afflicted with a status. Their status health bar regenerates back to full. So in theory, you can stack a whole bunch of statuses on the boss if you're able to deal enough status damage to apply the next status fast enough that before the duration of the previous status is done. Because like all of these are duration based. At least I think for now. Let's put a note here, or maybe I put it up here, all statuses are currently duration based. And I should make another note here, not after the previous status is finished or has finished its duration, which allows for stacking of multiple statuses. And this, I guess, this is another sense of progress in with an enemy that regenerates is if you can stack a whole bunch of statuses on the boss, then it'll be much easier to uh, go for the push for the kill when you're like dealing damage all the way from full to none. If the boss is being inhibited by all the statuses, so that's one of the effects. The effects could also like part of damage effects of some spells could be buffs. So for example, there's an ability that grants the player more damage if they land the ability on the ball on an enemy, and then that ability has a really long wind up. So it's really difficult to land it because probably the player will get hit first before they finish the wind up. Then it's a nice reward for landing that hard to hit ability by giving the player a buff. So that's another mechanic for abilities, aspects, effect. There's the element, surrounding mechanics. I think I'll just combine surrounding mechanics and aspects into just one thing called ability mechanics. Ability mechanics. There's effect, there's the element attached, there's mana steal, and then there's the cast animation, there's the cast backswing. So animation is sort of how long it takes uh, to go from pressing the button to start casting the ability until the actual effect of the ability uh, is executed. And then backswing, how long it how long the player is stunned after casting an ability. Uh, so actually, I should stop doing all these parentheses stuff. I should just note it down in bullet form to make it clearer. Now, is the wow the stream just completely died, eh? That's unfortunate. Oh wait, no, the stream is fine on my iPad, so I guess. So back here, cast how long it takes, and then cast backswing. So the reason why there's a cast backswing is uh I don't want to have these sort of infinite combos where the player just casts these certain combinations of spells and then they can't die or get damaged anymore. Uh, the the animation and backswing make it so the player has to or think about when they want to cast the ability. Like it has to be in between the enemy's attacks, not during, or else the player will just get hit before they get to cast the ability. Uh, Prevents infinite slash mindless spamming of abilities. Now, there are this is the reason why this is a cast animation cast backswing is part of the mechanics is not all abilities have a long cast animation or backswing. There are certain abilities that are meant to be fast, and so probably be instant. Like the player gets, for example, phase shift is probably going to be instant because in terms of the cast animation. But then I think it'll have a backswing just so again it can't be spammed. So the player has it's easy for the player to time when to cast phase shift, but once they get out of it, they're stunned for just a little bit, like maybe zero point 0.3 seconds. So they're vulnerable just a little bit. And then I can like let's see. I can technically make it so you can cancel out backswings by casting other abilities. So you're only minorly disabled. Player is uh, minorly stunned after casting ability. Prevents no actually hmm, technically there aren't any infinites anyway because you still have to attack. So it just prevents mindless spamming abilities. And I want to add one more thing. Player can cast abilities with other abilities to override backswing stun. Uh, this allows for seamless combos of abilities uh, while still not leaving the player entirely invulnerable. Because there's already a cast animation. So if you're combining backswing and animation together, it's comboing abilities together might get really tedious. That's why I think overriding the backswing with other abilities is fine, but overriding the backswing with regular attacks or movement is not fine. So uh, to override, so I just make that like highlighted. And then player cannot override back swing stun with regular moves slash attacks. There. I think that kind of mechanic will make comboing abilities fun but not mindless fun, which is what you want. Then there's Mana Steel, the other mechanic, and I'm not sure about others that I'll add, but there's those for now. I guess there's technically cast range and mana cost, so I'll add that. Cast. Oh wait, no, you're not choosing. Hmm. I think that's a detail of the spell itself, but definitely there's a mana cost. That's a general like idea. And then actually I still need to separate this mana steel to its own ano thing, mana steel. And I'll call it a mana steel mechanic. And I'll detail it wherein players melee attacks gain them mana. Oh wait, are the only way for them to gain mana. Uh, this incentivizes previously stated aggressive gameplay. There we go. So now on to more abilities and their effects. I guess I'm gonna go back to the list of Dota heroes if I see anything interesting. Hmm. Hmm. These are more orb abilities. Oh, you can summon environmental. All right. So there's an element as part of the ability. So maybe you should add the list of elements. So probably there's fire, ice, lightning, water. Uh, there. Is there anything else I'd like to add to fire, ice, lightning, and water? Hmm. I guess technically air or steam, but then that might get be that might become too finicky. I'll leave it as those for now. So there's the elements. So all of these like character abilities can be modified by the element. At least the damage versions, not the buffs, because the buffs can't really be affected by element. Unless you're making like a buff that protects you from a certain type of elemental damage. But for the elemental attack, for the damage effects, element can be attached to them. So some enemies are resistant to some elements, some enemies are take more damage from certain elements, and then certain environmental objects are affected by elements. So, for example, there are plants that are just in the background. Attacking them, they're not immediately going to break, so you have to hack away them a lot, so they have a bunch of HP, but they can burn if you cast a fire ability right on top of them. So that's what I mean by elements affecting the background. And then the background, or like environmental interactable objects, will affect the exploration combat. So that's a nice sort of connection between mechanics. Yeah, you want to make all your mechanics sort of work together as much as possible, or at least when it makes sense. And I think it does here. So now, all right, I was thinking of more. All right, I was thinking of. So these are damage effects, delivery types. Uh, I want to make this creates physical objects. So, for example, you make an ice wall. That's a classic. It changes the environment, lets you explore in certain ways because, for example, you create an ice wall, it lets you jump on it so that you can then jump from that increased ice wall height to reach further places. So that's definitely a cool thing to add. Um, so I could add in like walls slash blocks. We should capitalize these. Uh, you could make damage damage zones. So for example, uh, you set a place on fire. So there's this like zone that's just on fire. So enemies that go there will continually take damage. So if the player positions the fire pit, or not really pit, but fire zone, positions it well and like fights around that, then they get to deal more damage to the enemies or bosses while fighting, which is uh, I think a good mechanic as well. Um, let's see. So that's another spell type or ability type. Next, I want to look at more Dota 2 heroes. In my other tab. Uh, I believe we're still recording and streaming, or did something happen? Oof, I went offline again. Hmm. Oops. Don't do that. Uh, I'm really just offline, I guess. That's unfortunate. Well, for the YouTube video instead. So back to checking out Dota abilities. Let's those are just well, those are things we saw before. Those are technically things we still saw before. Summoning. Oh, that's technically similar to creating the objects, but instead it's an actual entity that will fight for you. I'm not sure I'll be able to code that well. but I'll place it in the ideas for now. So summons, I make it its own thing. Delivery type, yeah, and there's summons. So I won't detail that too much for now because I'm not sure about it in the first place. Oh, charged abilities or like charge up abilities. So I should put that in delivery types. Charge up abilities. Or I just call it charge up. And what else? Those are still buffs, those are still things. Uh, those are still normal. Those are still normal. Hmm. Maybe a Titan. Let's see, anything technically a summon and then an AoE ability. That's still the same as what we currently have in terms of general concept. Nothing new here. Nothing new here. Mars summons in arena, not really that different. Have I just stated all the different kinds of abilities? Ah, I might have. Oh, lol, the classic self-damaging ability. Well, I should probably add it in the list so I remember. Self-damaging. Basically, it has extra costs, and one of them is, well, yeah. So I should probably make a alternate cost type. So I'll put it here, alternate cost type, and then one is self-damaging. Oh, another cool one is random teleportation. I really like that. It's one of the new Dota items, and probably it was some old Diablo ability as well, I think, based on someone I learned from. Let's see. Uh, are there any more abilities that are interesting? Hmm, nope, not that, not that. Alright, purging abilities. You have those abilities you can cast while stunned. Or like, well, that depends. Do I want to have status effects on the player? Or it heals? Well, I think I want to have status effects on the player. Uh, and it'll be the Dark Souls style where there's a status bar, and once it builds up to full, once it reaches the max, then it will start doing the thing. Uh, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So we have buffs here, damage. Should be like that. I should transfer damage effects be back under damage itself. And then this is back there, this is back there. There we go. Buff, summons, alternate cost types. Buff on hit. Just to differentiate buffs and buffs from the damage. So there's damage, alternate cost type. Alternate cost type is that I should put that all the way back up there actually. All the way back up to the so we have modifiers. Then here we have the alternate cost types. And we should like make them align with everything else. Here character abilities, so we have damage, and then these are the different delivery types. I think these delivery types should not be under damage. They should just be under general. Uh, oops, like that. There. So these are the ability delivery types. This is the. I'll just do this ability. These are delivery types or effect types, I guess. They could the effective ability can either damage, they can summon, they can buff. Alright, the here damage effects. So status damage. I should transfer this down to effect types. And then I guess the buff on hit. Do I keep it on damage? Well, technically, it's already an effect type, and when I combine, yeah, I should get rid of this because, again, this is a modular kind of thing. We're already combining things, and buff on hit is already just combining damage and buff uh, in a specific way. So I'll just let it generate that when I think about it some other time. So damage effects in effect types. I should transfer status damage in the effect types. So there's damage, and then there's summons, buffs. Where do I put it? I guess I'll put it at the very start. Status damage, and then I'll make this elemental damage. So we have status damage. This is status types, and then I can get rid of this. So delivery types: orb, AoE, creates physical objects, and charge up. I feel like I'll transfer charge up to a different category called casting type, but I'll. Oh right, that could be a different kind of alternate cost to the ability. So alternate cost, there's self-damaging, there's charge up, and then there's random teleportation. There we go, that makes more sense. Should I make summon a delivery type or an effect type? I think it's an effect type. Actually, creating physical objects is technically also an effect type. The effect is it creates a physical object. So summons, I'll put it in summons as well. It summons physical objects. Uh, and then other is familiars, I guess. Yeah, the delivery type is still just orb or AoE. Oh wait, I forgot laser, of course. Laser. So you can either fire an orb, blast something, or laser it. Technically, there's one more which is to strike. So it's like just flavoring a strong attack, and so it's a melee spell, which is kind of cool. I could even place that distinction. It's melee. Laser is penetrating. AoE can be that. Okay, there. So we have more delivery types. What else did we want to flesh out? Um, I think I'll go back to Dota to see if there's anything else I can think of. That's a cool mechanic that I want. Hmm. Can't really think of anything for now. Actually, having ideas from LOL heroes, come to think of it. Basically, Katarina has this thing where you can throw daggers and they leave them in the ground, and then she has another ability that teleports her to the daggers. Uh, it's sort of similar to a. Oh, wait, maybe I should add it in the effects then. Mobility. Buff, summons, and damage. Uh, mobility itself. So there's teleport, there's dash. What else? There's jump. There's Wait, oops, why did it undo that? I think I'll leave it there for now. Yeah. Buff effects, move speed. I should separate these even more to like, this is offense, and then we have damage and attack speed. Then we have mobility. So we have, whoops, move speed, invisibility, phase as part of like mobility. I guess I'll add phase to the mobility because it's like sort of mobility slash defense. All right. Well, defense is technically a buff. In that sense, I should transfer this mobility to the buff. No, no, no. There's a teleport is a one-time happening, so it can't be a buff. Uh, yeah. So this differentiates between mobility that's over time and abilities that are like instant. So they happen in the instant that you cast the spell. And then, so that means there's in the buff effects, there's offense, mobility. Well, there's the Holy Trinity. There's defense as the last. So we've got shields, got what other defensive walls, I guess. Although technically the walls are all the way up here in summons. Uh, do I detail it? I think I'll detail it anyway, just so I'm reminded twice about where you can categorize these things. What else do I want to do? I guess I'm gonna go back to my list of Dota heroes to see if there's anything interesting. Mhm, mhm. Uh, Not this. No. I think I might have detailed every possible ability type. Yeah. Now it's all about combining all these abilities or like all these base types. So for example, I combine dash with wall. So when I dash, I leave a wall in my wake, or like I'll trail a wall behind me, which is pretty cool ability. It's not just casting an ice wall in front of you; it's casting an ice wall behind you after you make a dash move. Or if I combine a buffing familiar, so you make this is when you cast that ability, and it's probably difficult to cast, or it requires you to land a hit on the enemy. Then it will let you summon a familiar, and that familiar buffs you as long as it stays alive or something like that. Stuff like that. Uh, so it's not good enough for today. Technically, didn't really end up fleshing out the actual world building because I ended up just fleshing out the ability mechanics. Huh. Mm, well, I guess I'll leave the actual fleshing out of the setting elements for tomorrow's stream. If I get to stream tomorrow. Uh, yeah, I think I'll leave that. I leave it at that for now. I think I made a lot of progress. Well, thanks for watching. See ya.